This is Talking Drupal, a weekly chat about web design and development from a group of people with one thing in common. We love Drupal. This is episode 430, Drupal in 2024. This episode of Talking Drupal is sponsored by Hero Devs. On today's show, we're talking about Drupal in 2024, what we're looking forward to with Drupal 11, and the Drupal Advent Calendar with James Shields. We'll also cover Drupal 10.2 as our module of the week. Welcome to Talking Drupal. I'm John Picozzi, Solutions Architect at EPAM, and today my co-hosts are joining us from the listener's seat, James Shields, creator of the Drupal Advent Calendar. James first encountered Drupal just as Drupal 5 launched. He initially used it for some science fiction websites, as well as his local Lego fan group. You and Nick will have plenty to talk about. More recently, he's been developing an online registration for science fiction conventions. He took the Drupal Easy Professional Module Development course in 2023 and has been contributing to a number of Drupal projects and has become a maintainer of several as well. He started a Drupal Advent Calendar on a whim in 2022 and recruited some friends to help with it in 2023 so he wouldn't have to do all the work himself. When not working at his day job, he's contributing to Drupal projects and enjoys building Lego models, helps organize science fiction conventions, and goes on hikes with his partner and his border collie puppy. James, welcome to the show, and thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Also joining us today to talk about the future is Martin Anderson-Klutz, a senior solutions engineer at Acquia.
Thanks, John. Great to be here.
Also joining us for his third week, Ron Northcutt, head of DevRel at AppSmith.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. And last, but certainly not least, Nick Laughlin, founder of Enlightened Development. How's it going, Nick?
Happy to be here. Looking forward to hear what you guys think about Drupal in 2024.
Let's bring in Martin to talk about our module of the week, or in this case, our core of the week.
Thanks, John. I think we've already had a bit of a spoiler there, but since Drupal 10.2 was released in just the last few days, I thought it would be great to talk a little bit about what site owners and developers can look forward to as they upgrade to Drupal 10.2. So under the hood, there are some important technology updates like support for PHP 8.3. It does also include some capabilities that previously required using contrib projects. So things like file name sanitization options or having a search filter on the permissions page. End users will see performance enhancements and improved caching APIs, including things like support for PHP fibers, which should help to accelerate handling things like asynchronous remote calls. Now, content creators will notice things like a new revision UI for media, as well as a wider editing area in the Claro admin theme when working on large screens. They'll also see the return of the Show Blocks button in CKEditor 5, which has been missing since CKEditor 4 until now. Site builders will see a new field creation UI that has a more visual interface and an updated workflow. There's a block visibility option based on HTTP response status. So, for example, you can have blocks that are visible or invisible based on the page being like a 404 or a 403 response page. The tour module is no longer enabled by default on the standard and Umami profiles. And there's a new negated regular expression operator for views filters for string or integer fields to exclude results based on matching a provided pattern. Site owners will see improvements like the announcement feed, which is now stable and included in the standard profile. And the functionality that has to date been in the experimental help topics module is now merged into the main help module. So the help topics module is deprecated as of 10.2. And there is also a new permission specifically to be able to use the help pages. Now, there's quite a few changes for developers, and probably one of the biggest is related to uh, the use of PHP attributes instead of doctrine annotations to declare metadata for plugin classes. Now, there's already work underway to get core code converted, and an issue open to have Rector do this conversion for contrib projects. There's also a new deprecation helper backwards compatible call method to help write Drupal extensions that can support multiple versions of core. There's a performance test base now in core to support automated testing of performance metrics. There's a new config target property in config form base to simplify creating configuration forms. Symfony Mailer is now a composer dependency of core. And there's a new decimal primitive data type. I could talk about a variety of others, including expanded configuration validation, Symfony auto wiring support, HTML5 output from the HTML utility class as the new default. But let's open it up to discussion.
I love the new release model for Drupal. So much good stuff is getting in with this new process. I was chuckling when you were talking about the site builder's new negated regular expression for strings and integers, because first of all, I think that's a really valuable advanced feature that will make some really complex views. I don't want to say simpler, because introducing regex is never simple, but more streamlined. But I think it's funny that gets into 10.2 before. There's an issue I've been following forever where null versus false doesn't work for Boolean filters. And that issue has been ongoing. I mean, part of the reason is scope keeps changing, so it's hard to hit a moving target, but that issue's been open for years. And I feel like introducing regex would be a lot harder than just handling empty Booleans. But yeah, tons of great stuff. And people have been reaching out to me actually about the new field UI changes. The team that put that together, I think that was a lot of people on Tim's team at Acquia. They've been doing a great job getting, just kind of improving the field UI. I've been seeing it just working with 10.1. I'm looking forward to the 10.2 changes.
Like I'm super excited about some of this stuff too. I think like the field creation UI changes are going to be super nice for site builders. I reread the negate regular expression operator because I was kind of thinking of like the negate checkbox that you see everywhere. That's not very like clear on what it does, but being able to add a regular expression to remove stuff from a view feels like a superpower to me, because like there's always that instance where you're like, I want this to include all of this stuff except this one thing. This one thing. And it's either because it's on that same page or like, who knows what that one thing is. But I feel like that's going to be super useful for views. And you know what? Block visibility on HTTP responses.
Yeah.
So like, I feel like that's like a long time coming, right? Like it's interesting because like 404 and 403 pages always felt like, I don't know, weird and like not as customizable as the rest of Drupal. And now you can drop a block on there, like you want to put a funny GIF on your 404 page, you can go ahead and do it because you can drop blocks on those pages now.
I feel like there used to be, or maybe there still is, a contrib project that would let you do some of that, or at least for 404 or 403. But having that in core now is really powerful.
I think I always used to do one of two things: either redirect, like there's a redirect on 404 module, I think, or you just create a custom template page for it, and then you have to like manually put the block into that page. But yeah, this makes it a lot more streamlined. I'm also very, very happy about Tor no longer being enabled by default. Having to disable that every single new project is...
I think you've mentioned that a few times on the podcast.
We're just going to go down. We'll just scroll right down the agenda to the smaller core topic now and talk about that.
Small core. Is that still a thing?
We're gonna get there. Don't you worry. That's a teaser for later.
Sorry, I'm quite pleased with the PHP attributes because I always found the having sort of not quite code, but code adjacent stuff in for plugins in comments really irritated me. So I'm looking forward to that, and it just makes the code look tidier. And
I always found the doctrine stuff to be like unusually opaque. Like maybe it's just me, but it's like you were mentioning earlier, Nick, it's one of those things that is a little bit too much like black magic. So hopefully this makes things easier.
Does anybody know if there's a good blog post comparing the two and the changes between them?
Well, if you go to the change record, it actually does show some examples of like the doctrine and then the equivalent using the PHP attribute. And actually, one of the things that's nice, at least in how it's formatted on Drupal.org, is it seems like you actually get more of the highlighting in your IDE by using the PHP attributes as opposed to the doctrine, which all just shows as this giant blob of gray text.
Interesting. Okay, that's cool. That's good to know, because I like, as somebody that doesn't jump into to the comments very frequently, I feel like understanding the reason for the shift and what the different style of syntax would be interesting. But I will take a look at that change record.
I don't know if you want spoilers for the Advent Calendar, but there is a mention of it coming up, which I feel isn't. I feel I can mention here because it will be open by the time the podcast broadcast. So
that is true. It won't be a spoil. I mean, it's going to be a spoiler to us, but usually secrets are pretty safe with us, so you'll be okay there. All right, Drupal 10.2, very exciting.
I will say I have already found a bug in it.
Oh, there you go. There's a place you can put those.
I perhaps rashly upgraded the site that the Advent Calendar is running on to 10.2, and my RSS feed stopped working.
Actually,
and
that's risky.
You raised a question for me. I was all ready to move along, and then I saw one more thing in this list I want to ask about. So 10.2 has Symphony Mailer as a composer dependency. Does that mean the system mail has already, or mail system? Which one is it, guys?
I think it's mail system.
Thanks. That's already been removed from core, or will be removed from core. How is that? Is that even required by core?
Mail system's a contrib module that helps you make changes to how mail is used.
Okay. Any insight as to why Symphony Mailer is a composer dependency now?
I was looking at the change record earlier, and I think there's detail in there. It does also talk about how you can enable Symphony Mailer, if I recall correctly, by adding some code to your settings.php. So instead of having to use like a contrib module to make that switch, so it may be related to that. But again, in the change record, and actually what we can do is include a link to the list of 10.2 change records in the show notes as well.
Yeah, that was kind of where my question was going, was like, is this to make Drupal core better at sending emails on its own without help?
It says this is with the aim of replacing the existing mail system in a future release. So I think it's foundational, and then we have a bit of overlap, and then eventually
there you go,
the old and move forward with the new.
That makes
sounds like a deprecation coming our way soon.
Yeah, heads up.
A deprecation coming soon to a computer near you. All right. Well, on that note, Martin, thank you for a very enlightening module of the week segment. This episode of Talking Drupal is sponsored by Hero Devs. Let's talk about life after Drupal 7 end of life. Since August 2023, there has been a lot of discussion around Drupal 7's official end of life in January 2025. It's no secret that many companies, organizations, and individuals are still on Drupal 7 and have yet to migrate. I think we can all agree that migration, while beneficial, is not always feasible. This is where Hero Devs comes in. Hero Devs has partnered with core team maintainers of Drupal 7 to build and maintain their Drupal 7 never-ending support product, ensuring the same quality of support you have come to expect over the years. Drupal 7 never-ending support, or NES, allows for an effortless transition, allowing your site to remain secure, compliant, and compatible after Drupal 7 goes end of life. This allows you to migrate on your own time. Hero Devs promises to keep Drupal 7 alive and well, even offering support for the current top 100 Drupal 7 modules. If you'd like to know more about Drupal 7 never-ending support, visit herodevs.com. That's HERODEVS.com. All right. So before we jump into talking about the future in 2024, let's talk a little bit about the here and now. James, the here and now is the Drupal Advent Calendar, which by the time this show airs, it will be fully opened out to the world, right? And you may or may not start working on 2024's calendar. But can you just tell us a little bit about the Drupal Advent Calendar and, how it got started, why you started it, that sort of thing?
It started last year, and literally the 30th of November, I was drifting off to sleep, and I had a random thought: wouldn't it be cool if there was a Drupal Advent Calendar? And I think most people would have left it there and said, "That's a nice idea," but I just sort of got thinking, well, what can I do when it's Advent Eve? So I thought, anything involving other people wasn't really going to be practical. So I thought, well, I could do a Drupal module behind every door of the Advent calendar. So sort of, I think next morning I put together something, and I'd also been doing some logos for the Project Browser initiative. So I was sort of thinking that the project browser logos would look great behind Advent calendar doors. So I took some of the projects that have been worked on that, and I think I did admin toolbar first, but basically had a blog post ready lunchtime. My wonderful partner Fiona did some proofreading on me, because I am terrible for writing stuff with lots of typos in. So she was a hero throughout the month, and really helped keep it going. But I will say I never considered how much work it would be to do 24 blog posts in a row. And if I had thought of that, I probably would have said, well, maybe I'll do it next year. But by the end of day 24, I was really sort of needing a break. But so at that point, it was sort of, I really enjoyed doing it, but it was definitely sort of, I don't want to do it like that again.
Yeah.
So back around DrupalCon and Lille, I started asking people would they be interested in helping with it, and basically got a bunch of people, and with the idea that a different person would write for each door of it, trying to get people to finish things for it. But it's definitely been a lot less stressful than doing it all on my own.
I feel like getting 24 people to write separate things in such a short amount of time is almost as much work as doing it yourself. But there's
I do not agree. As I'm likening it to show notes every day in my head, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's more work. I feel like at least the writing, right, is it's kind of being disseminated a little bit.
It's a different kind of work.
Yes, I definitely feel I should have given earlier deadlines, and probably started recruiting people earlier.
Less like development and more like project management, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I suppose I always thought it would be lovely to have a pretty advent calendar that you can click on the doors, and each door opens and it remembers which doors you've opened. So that was the aim for this year, and I only really started that in November, but just about managed to get it finished for the start of the month.
So what you're telling us is you're very deadline driven. So I'm curious about I'm curious about last year and maybe this year too. But how did you go about? You said that you started with Project Browser modules that have been updated, but how did you go about deciding which modules to talk about, or which people to invite? What was your what was your process?
Well, I suppose this year, I mean, it was mainly, I suppose I started with people I know, and I was lucky enough to be accepted as a mentor in DrupalCon Lille. We had a mentor channel that I put out an invite to all the other mentors. So a few people came forward from there. I suppose there's been a mix of people I've met at things like DrupalCon, and some people I did just send a random message to people that are involved in projects that I think are really interesting, that I respect. So, but most of the people are people I've at least had a conversation with in person. Okay. And I think there were a couple of people that said, "Oh, I know somebody else who would be interested in being one." So a couple of people were brought in that way, and it was really up to people to pick what they wanted to write about. The thing that has struck me a bit is I think the ones that have been most interesting have been the ones that are sort of story based, as opposed to, I think, there's some that are more or less a tutorial about how you use a module.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the ones that have a bit more of a backstory of why the module was created, or like there's one on mentoring at DrupalCon, which was I think just a sort of a love piece to mentoring. And so I think I'd love to make it more focused on stories than the sort of we don't really need another documentation page on
how to
a
use
module.
It's when we were talking about this, I hadn't heard about it, and so we were talking about this in the last one, and I just remember thinking that I was getting real like early Drupal vibes from the concept, not the implementation, but like it used to be when Drupal was a lot smaller and it was a lot more, kind of hacky in certain ways. You would see a lot more of these kind of purpose-built kind of specialty things that were just sometimes just for fun, right? And this feels to me like kind of a callback to that, that idea of like, hey, I've got this crazy idea, I want to do something fun, and then you just do. But I'm kind of curious, James, have you been surprised by like the response from the community and how like popular it is? Do you think that says anything about, kind of maybe going back to our roots a little bit and kind of the fun aspect of why we're here in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has been, it's been, I've certainly got some good responses from people saying that they've enjoyed it. And yeah, I think people have, I've been surprised more people didn't say, oh no, I'm too busy to do a piece for it. So I think I suppose been surprised both on the response from people on taking part in it, and response from people who've been reading it, and it's all been pretty positive. And yeah, I do like the vibe of I suppose just getting on and doing it, and getting. But I think it is nice to get a group of people together to do something, as opposed to just writing stuff on a blog and hoping people will read it.
I actually was, so you mentioned a little earlier that the functionality to like remember which doors were opened, it was a new addition this year. And I, like a couple weeks ago, actually no, I'm sorry, what day is it? Okay, so a couple days ago, I clicked on 18, and And I was like, oh, I hadn't been here in a couple of days, so I hadn't clicked on the other ones. And I was like, oh, look, none of them are open. I'm like, oh, let me go open the other ones. And I was like, I'm like, this is like so much fun. I'm like, oh, look at that. And I'm like, oh, look at that. That's cool. And so, once this show airs, if you haven't been to the Drupal Advent Calendar, you can go there and open all of the windows by the time this goes out, and you'll be able to have all of that fun yourself.
Nice.
I have to say, whenever I do an advent calendar too, whether it's a physical one or Drupal digital, I should say this is the only digital advent calendar I've ever done. I always forget that advent calendars aren't chronologically in order. Like you choose 1, 2, 3, 4, but I always whenever I pick it up, I always go to the top right or bottom. Like I always forget all the numbers are random and you have to search. So I'm like, so it's like, wait, what's today? Today's the 14th. Okay, I need to look for number 14. Where is it on the grid?
So for Talking Drupal, I just had an idea. In our newsletter, we actually do a Lego minifigure of the week. And maybe next Christmas we can do a Talking Drupal Lego minifigure advent calendar.
That would be cool.
Nick, you have a whole year to work on it. There you go.
If you want to do that, John, I know how much work it is. To even get
the good thing is we know there's a module for that. So
yeah.
Oh, there it is.
So, I mean, I have to say, I've personally enjoyed the different perspectives and hearing from people that are clearly passionate about different modules. How about next year, James? Can you give us any preview in terms of things that you might have in the works for, Christmas 2024?
I think it's probably too early to get into much detail. I mean, I definitely would like to do it again next year. I think I would definitely like it to be a community project again, because I think that's been a success. I think my lesson this year is start earlier and try and get I think there's a few of them that have been a little bit too close to the wire for my liking, so I'll try and get more of them ready
James,
further ahead of time.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes, Ron.
Well, first, it might be cool if if there's at some point in the year a form or something where people could submit ideas, but that's just neither here nor there. I kind of feel like at this point the project and the movement, and now kind of going forward, I kind of feel like you need to get Dries in there, man. I think that could be
aim big
here.
Yep, I agree. And I suppose the other thought that at the moment it's just on my blog. It might be nice if it was in the Drupal.org space.
That would be cool.
I have no idea who I would talk to about trying to get that set up, but I
feel like we could message our friend Tim Lennon at the DA, and he might know somebody that could get that figured out.
And I'll bet Lynn Capozzi would be able to take that and use that to help spread the message of Drupal far and wide as well. So it could be a win-win.
Man, I feel like we just signed up a lot of people for a lot of work.
That's okay. They can join Nick in his quest to do that, because you said you were going to do it, right, Nick? The minifigure one next week.
I'm not committing.
I see what Ron did there, and I like it.
Sorry, buddy.
Since we've bridged the gap into the future. First, I want to say, James, thank you for for doing the Drupal Advent Calendar, and I definitely look forward to it in 2024. Let's talk about the future, more specifically the future of Drupal. And we got a lot of Drupal coming our way in 2024. I'm wondering specifically what features folks are looking forward to in Drupal in 2024. Nick, I am going to start with you. What features are you looking forward to?
There's a couple things. One is the continued removal of Drupal 9 sites. I think seeing things started to stabilize on a more modern Drupal, I think as an ecosystem, is exciting for me, even though it's not like a specific feature. Seeing people working on the kind of the same front. I think we're getting a lot of efficiency there. The second feature in Drupal that I'm looking forward to in Drupal in 2024 is when my pull request finally gets merged, the ability to select the header style in views for the pager, because it's going to be the first, it's not the first core issue I've been credited on, but it's the first core feature that I think I did the majority of the work on that has like a UI component to it. So I'm looking forward to that getting in, because I mean, I've been working with Drupal for 15 years. I've built modules, but I've never built a UI specific feature in Drupal. So definitely looking forward to that.
I like how your first item was getting sites off of Drupal 9 and into Drupal 10 when we still have sites in Drupal 7. I like.
But Drupal 7 still officially supported, so it's hard to say
Oh,
leave
okay.
that behind.
Fine line there, but okay. I see where the logic is. That makes sense. Ron, what about you? What are you looking forward to?
Well, I'm definitely very interested in the recipes concept. That's been something that
Yeah.
I've personally, for a very, very, very long time, have felt was just like just out of reach. I used to be on I used to run the demo team at Acquia a while back, and we did a lot of stuff with installation profiles, and there's some amazing things that the engineers over there did that they came up with that helped us. But just I saw the results of what happens when you put that kind of starting place at like 60-70% for really awesome people, and amazing things happen. And installation profiles can just be really painful, and it's really hard to build and maintain that. So that's one that I'm super excited about personally. I think from the community perspective, we'll see more of. Personally, I think that I'm also really excited to see the stuff that we don't even know is coming yet. In some of the conversations I've had with people in the community, especially in the last like 3 or 4 months, different organizations, different companies, there's currents and movements, and people are trying to bring stuff up and make things happen. And some of those I feel pretty confident will start to surface in 2024. And I've heard so many amazing things from people that have these great ideas that I feel confident if even a few of those pop up, it's going to be, it's going to blow some minds. So I'm excited to see what we don't even know about yet, to be honest.
Yeah. So admittedly, Ron stole mine. I mean, he didn't, because he didn't know it was mine, but we can agree on recipes. I definitely am very excited with the ability to have recipes in core and be able to start from a recipe and be able to incorporate a recipe into an existing site and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So I think that is very cool. Definitely excited to get away from install profiles and distributions, because I feel like recipes are nice. They're little packages, and they're things that you can kind of build on top of and make your own, as opposed to some of those other things where you kind of have to stick to the original form factor. So and yes, there are other things in 2024 we don't even know could be coming, which is always exciting to see how Drupal moves. James, what about you? Anything specific feature wise you're looking forward to in Drupal?
Well, I suppose I'm quite looking forward to Project Browser. I've been helping out with that project a bit, and it'd be great to see it get into core. I think on the project side, or I think on the Project Browser side of things, a lot of things are ready. There's some stuff that needs to get into Drupal core to allow it to be there, that I think have taken a little longer than everyone would have liked, but I think it's getting there. So I think hopefully we'll see that in core in 2024.
I agree.
And I think recipes are exciting. I think we've just started talking about how recipes might appear in Project Browser in the future.
Yeah.
I think there's sort of debating over whether they should be in the main project browser with modules, or whether there should be a separate recipe browser. So it'd be interesting to see what happens with that.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a cool part of Project Browser is the ability to kind of expand it away, not only to include modules, but to include kind of like recipes and these, you know, starter templates or starter kit ideas that are coming down the pipe. So yeah, I definitely think that's a good one.
I think Teams is also on the radar there, and but another sort of separate thing which relates to what Nick was saying about ending Drupal 9. I think one of the issues there was that you know, a lot of modules took quite a while. I mean, a lot of modules were ready for Drupal 10 really early, but a lot took quite a while to get an actual release out. And one of the things I'm quite excited about in the GitLab CI is you can basically set a flag for test against next minor release and next major release. And so I'm hoping that modules that use the CI will start putting next major release in their pipelines, and that should mean that you know, but basically the whatever changes are coming in the Drupal 11 or 12, your module will automatically be tested against that, and if some deprecation comes up, you'll suddenly get a flag that it's no longer validating against Drupal 11, and so I think that should mean that a lot of modules will be, you know, basically ready for the next major version when it launches.
That actually just reminded me of something else I'm excited for, is more modules going to semantic versioning.
Well, to clarify two things. Well, first, John, all modules on Drupal right now are using semantic versioning. They just still have 8.x in there, but it's using semantic versioning behind the scenes.
Okay.
But I agree with you. Having getting rid of the 8.x and the 9.x and all that stuff, I think will be helpful. I agree with that sentiment,
because it's not confusing to people that don't know under the hood everything is using semantic versioning.
Exactly. And to further James's point, I'm hoping that testing stuff will prevent a problem that I'm seeing coming in the next major version, and that is that a lot of modules have stopped defining their dependency on Drupal by Drupal 9 or Drupal 10, and they're just saying we work with Drupal versions greater than 9 or greater than 10, which is good in some cases because it means that the bridging module isn't as big of an issue. Like you have an issue when somebody goes from 9 support to 10 support and don't have an in between. Like you have to jump through some hoops to get that. But as we've seen, it took a long time for a lot of modules to update from Drupal 9 to Drupal 10. I think the same will happen with the next version of Drupal. And if we don't have, but if a module says it's Drupal 10 or greater compatible, and it's not really working with Drupal 10, how are we going to how are we going to know whether a module is actually compatible with the next version of Drupal if they're just saying they're compatible with the next version? And some of those testing, like what you're saying, James, I think will help with that because we'll have some way to flag those modules as this, you know, this says greater than 10, but 11 wasn't out when they said that, and 11, it's not really compatible with 11.
So here's a question. I legitimately don't know the answer, but do you guys think it would be possible to get rid of specifically saying which version is supported at the module level and actually have something like those tests tell you? Like this module, I didn't say this module supports 8, 9, 10. I just said this module is 8+, right? It's in the right format. And then the tests run and say, oh, this will work with 8 and 9, but not 10. By the way, if you wanted to work with 10, here's the rector code or whatever. Like, you think that future could be possible?
I don't see why not. Like, you got to figure that if it's, you know, the way Drupal is going, right? It's deprecating, you know, its deprecations are pretty widely known, right? So it's like if
Yeah.
your module is using a deprecated function, it should be able to say like, "Oh, sorry, but
Easy enough.
come Drupal 11, you're going to be SOL." I'm going to
Yeah.
give Martin a second to chime in
Yeah.
here because I think he's been trying to jump in
It's
for
been
the
moving
last
closer to the
5
mic
minutes
edge.
or so.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, I guess the one challenge that comes to mind is when you're running Composer, it would want sort of a fast way to know, like, is this module compatible with my site or not?
Mm.
And so you definitely could make that sort of automatically derived, but you'd want some way to sort of expose that. So things like Composer would be able to know that without having to sort of like run tests every time.
So
Yeah.
I think that's interesting because I think the Composer dependency to say like eight plus, right? Or 8 and above, I guess it would be okay. But yeah, I kind of see what you're saying there. Cause like if it were a new, say it was a new issue that came up, right? Yeah, like I don't know. I don't know if you'd necessarily check Drupal.org to be like, oh, well, actually.
Well, I think that's part of the thing though, is that it sometimes causes confusion. The fact that the Drupal dependency and the Composer dependencies can be different. But I wonder if that's the way things are going, because I'd rather be able to download a module with Composer, and then when I try to install it, have Drush or Drupal say like, "Hey, this module really isn't compatible with this version of Drupal." So maybe it goes back to kind of the packaging script, which used to do a bunch of stuff for the dependencies.
Yeah, I was
where
gonna say
it puts in there,
used to update.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
So maybe it puts in
Interesting
there
idea.
that it's beta for 11 or something, or hasn't been tested with 11 or something like that. So that if you're installing that, the problem is if that kind of thing gets put in, then you'll just have 5,000 modules that say that they haven't been tested with Drupal 11, and you'll just
Well, I
get
mean,
used to installing it anyway. But
it used to be, I don't think it is anymore, correct me if I'm wrong, but it used to be where when you added the module, it would tack on some metadata to your info file for the module. And I don't think it does it. So that could be a way to do it.
Well, I think that might be what it does, is that if you're supporting, now that I'm talking through this, I think I might have misunderstood it. I think the change that I was talking about might have been Composer only, and if you say greater than 10 in the info in the YAML file, then it's not going to automatically say that it's available for 11 anyway. So this might be a non-issue anyway. It might be working the way that we want it to work already, and it's not a non-issue. I'll have to test it, but that's one thing I've noticed that I'm concerned about.
I think it's valid, and I think that also ties into one of those other things we haven't talked about, but automatic updates. So,
we're going to get to automatic updates. We are definitely going to get there. Before we do, though, I would like to ask Martin the Drupal features question. Which ones are you looking forward to?
So certainly something I've been pretty passionate about for a while is really trying to create the best admin experiences possible within Drupal. And I feel like we've definitely seen a renewed momentum around that in core. So, this year we've seen an updated interface for reusing an existing field. In 10.2, we just got the updated interface for creating a new field that actually has like icons and descriptions and some of those good things. I think there was also an update in terms of doing like, bulk operations within views and some of those kinds of things. So those are some great examples. There's also the navigation sort of update that's sort of in the works. And I think we talked about the module a few weeks back around that. So, lots of great work there. And I definitely feel like we're going to continue to see that kind of sort of, innovation and renewal in 2024. So definitely looking forward to that. The other thing is, I feel like there's been a bit of a move to try and get Drupal or get off the Drupal island on the front end side of things. So, certainly the move to Twig was a big, move away from sort of, very Drupal specific ways of writing templates and some of those things. But I feel like, headless is sort of, an extreme way of saying, let's allow people with other skill sets to do great work in terms of making sites that where the content is managed in Drupal look amazing. But I would love to see, like there are existing component libraries and ways for Drupal sites to be able to pull those in so that you're not sort of creating all of your components from scratch. Those can be sort of reused, again, build on community efforts and so on. So definitely looking forward to seeing what folks can do in the community. And there are, already lots of different editors and experiences that people are working on to try and
Yep.
create some of those things. So, to see those continue to mature and new folks coming in with new ideas, I think that's going to be pretty exciting over the next year as well.
Man,
With,
Martin
with
just hit on so
but
many things I'm excited about. Go ahead, Nick. What were you going to say?
I was just gonna say, with absolutely zero evidence to back this claim, maybe it's just a hope. I feel like single directory components will help with the ability to start integrating some of those component libraries and things. And to I think James's point, like Project Browser has been talking about a system for importing recipes. I hope that there's some way to create a component directory as well for single directory components, in a way to like say, hey, I need a calendar thing. Here's the 4 different calendar,
Yeah.
or maybe something simpler. Like, hey, I need the ability to show a date on the front end. Here's the 5 different single directory components that people have contributed. Let me pick the one that looks best for
interesting
me and pull that in.
It's interesting that I've realized now that Project Browser feels more like a framework for future browser like tools within Drupal, where we have the ability to use that for a bunch of different things. I definitely see single directory components as one of those things. Recipes is another. I just want to go back to some of the things Martin said that I was really excited about. And then I have a totally different question for you guys. Navigation, the navigation module. Once you did that as the module of the week, I switched like 2 sites over to it, my personal site. And then I just kind of played with it in a sandbox a little bit. And I will tell you that it is pretty awesome. I do enjoy it. It still needs a little bit of work, which is, that's just the way Drupal works. But I don't know that I'll go back to admin menu, which saddens me just a little bit. But and then the other thing is the headless stuff. I think in 2024, you're right, we're gonna see more advancements in the headless space for Drupal, and maybe even like a headless theme. I don't know. Could be a thing. I don't know if that's going to happen, but yeah, we'll see. That combined with single directory components, it's definitely looking very bright. Okay, so one thing that is coming in 2024 is Drupal 11. It has such great things as Project Browser, starter templates, recipes, those automatic updates or automated updates that Ron was just talking about, and then as well as pushing some things forward like smaller core. I'm wondering what you guys think of Drupal 11 and all of those things. So, Ron, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm a little behind the curve. My main site that I work on is still on Drupal 9. Although the next couple of weeks when I'm off, I'll be moving to 10. So stay tuned for that. But overall, the big thing that I'm really looking forward to, kind of like with Martin, is really the improved admin experience and UX. Like, I think there's so much there that we can do to make things better. The stuff kind of under the hood and the dev stuff, like I think that's something Drupal's always been really good at, is serving the developer. Not always great, but always getting better and getting better faster. And that's also a place where I feel like the average kind of experienced, to some degree, Drupal developer knows enough to kind of work around things and jump through hoops, and that's fine. But when you start talking about actual users and especially site builders who don't necessarily have that ability, and they don't even necessarily understand why things are the way they are. Like, if I see something that's bad UX, I understand why that decision was made. But if you don't understand it, it can just be frustrating. So overall, I'm really excited about the the continued movement towards improving the user experience.
It's
So we should be
interesting.
grateful for that.
When Dries first talked about like ambitious site builders, I got like super excited because like that really spoke to me, and I was like, man, I love Drupal, obviously. Big surprise, I like Drupal. You know, and you know, I kind of saw the you know, Drupal started and had its roots in being like very developer centric, and I think that there were people that made it, you know, worked on the admin, worked on the user interface to make it do the wonderful things that it does today. But I'm very excited to see kind of like moving into a more like user friendly, not necessarily less developer centric, but like more of a tool where a non-developer can take it off the shelf and use it as if you know, as if anybody else could. So
I mean, that's how I got started with Drupal. Like even before I was doing any real development, it was all Lego pieces, put them together, figure out how to work through the config to make it do as close to what I wanted as possible. And that's where I kind of got bit by the bug of having that power. So trying to make it even easier, that as kind of a gateway drug, I guess, to get people into better development and application building.
Yep.
I think we got a lot to offer.
Yeah, definitely. James, I know that you've been doing a lot of work with Project Browser, helping those folks out, push that forward. Is there anything else in Drupal 11 you're kind of looking forward to, or you know, you think is worth noting?
I'm trying to think now. I mean, Project Browser automatic updates are, I think, really going to be interesting. I suppose I don't think it's. I don't know if one thing I think is quite cool is the starter kit themes. So I don't know if there's anything new in that for 11. I know one of the things that's being worked on is making Olivero work as a starter kit theme, which I think would be quite niche and let people use that as their.
That would be definitely quite neat, seeing as I just tried to do that the other day. I had posted in a chat like, hey, I really like Olivero, but I wanted to change the CSS a little bit. Can I do it? And it was kind of like, not really, maybe, I don't know. So like more better documentation on that, and a path to do that would be very helpful.
Well, that's one of those fascinating things, though. Like you posted that issue too about converting Olivero into a starter kit, and I went down that. I read that issue, and the that's the funny thing. Like starter kit at this point is super useful when you're starting a new project. Like it makes it really easy to get started. But starter kit wasn't created for that. It was created for some random other thing, and that's why creating an Olivero starter kit is really, really difficult. Like the pull request or the merge request to fix that or add that feature has hundreds of lines of code changes to starter kit and PHP and all this stuff to get it to work. And so that now there's a new issue spawned to like look at the starter kit process and see if there's a way to make it easier to generate your own. I wasn't able to find the reason why starter kit was generated. I suspect it has something to do with testing. But it's funny how writing something for testing makes it more generally useful, because before starter kit, after Drupal 8, making a new theme was always painful. It was a lot of work. And now generating at least a starting place is pretty straightforward.
After this conversation, I'm now thinking I should just create a module to add my own style sheet and then like put my stuff in there and call it a day. But
I think I know with the GenAdmin theme, there's an option to sort of drop in a CSS file and it'll sort of pull that in. I think I had asked Mike Herschel at one point to do something similar with Olivero, so maybe we should open a feature request issue.
Well, Martin, what are you looking forward to in Drupal 11?
So I'll definitely agree with a sentiment that I've heard come up a couple of times, that I think the combination of Project Browser and recipes and the way that's potentially sort of, I think, transformative in terms of who will really be able to take Drupal and run with it and start to build out experiences. I think that's really exciting. I'm going to actually use this opportunity, though, to lobby for something that I feel like hasn't seen a lot of love in core in a while, and I think would be awesome, which is workspaces. So
Oh,
the ability to
Whoa.
sort of
Yeah.
take multiple nodes and work on them in sort of a dedicated, almost like a database space, and then all at once bulk publish those, or work through different
Yeah.
workflow states. I think about like any retail operation that has like fall, winter, spring, summer collections, the ability to
Mm.
flip those over all at once would be really cool. Like higher ed institutions that change their content once a year. Like there are so many use cases that map really well to people that are using Drupal widely, that I feel
Mm.
like getting workspaces finished would be really, really powerful.
So I have to ask, because I don't know, where does it stand right now? Because the last time I used it, and admittedly this was a couple of years ago, maybe at this point in time, like it was not great. It was very hard to use, and kind of felt like it broke a lot of stuff because I got a lot of big red error messages. So just wondering where that stands.
So I think the last time I personally tried it was about a year ago. There was an issue that I had opened a couple of years ago around media and how that works with workspaces.
Hmm.
And then I think a core committer or somebody's maintainer went in and made a comment of like, is this still an issue? So I went in and tried it again and was like, yes, I can still reproduce it with whatever it was at the time, 9.3 or something like that. So I it's one of those things that on sort of contribution days or those kinds of things would love to sort of roll up my sleeves and help to write some code, see if we can make some improvements there. But would
So-
be great to get a broader conversation going about that again.
So Martin, I have a present for you. I don't know if it's a wonderful, like, getting Castle of Grayskull in the 80s when you were a kid Christmas present, or if it's more of a white elephant. But there is a very unknown, secret, under development module that I recently heard about and was raved to by someone in the community that is incredibly knowledgeable and knows their stuff, called WSE, Workspaces Extra. WSE. I haven't tested it, but from what I understand, this module, and it's still under development, is covers a lot of the problems, fixes a lot of things, and I believe is actually being used by some very large company somewhere. In terms of,
Ron's committed the cardinal sin of talking Drupal. He's given everybody the module name or the path to the module page before finishing his statement. So you lost all those guys about halfway through what you were saying.
as I said, this was for Martin. If anybody else wants to follow along, that's fine.
Yeah,
But
everybody's reading.
it's been recommended to me by someone that is a very good friend that I trust, that you do as well. So
Yeah.
I think I know who you mean.
I feel like this is going to be a talking Drupal topic in 2024. I'm going to have to find a workspaces expert and bring them on to talk.
Yeah, at the very least, a module of the week. But yeah, if we could get a full show about it, that would be even better.
Oh yeah, we can do that. I know a guy. Nick, let's your feature. I'm sorry, your Drupal 11 aspirations. What are you looking forward to? I noticed smaller core is on the list, so
Yeah.
if you wanna talk about that, I'm open.
Actually, I want to talk about GitLab.
Yeah, we could talk about
Because-
that too, because I think that's a huge improvement. To
Yeah, because I think smaller core is great, but I'm not a product manager of Drupal. I'm not a subsystem maintainer, so I don't truly have. I'm happy when they're able to kind of get things off their plate that that they want to, but I feel that's their decision to make, right? I'm very happy with the removal of Tor from the standard profile. Those kinds of things I think make it easier for me as a developer or somebody creating new sites. But truthfully, I think one of the biggest improvements to Drupal in recent history is a lot of the stuff like GitLab CI. Like I can't overstate. We've mentioned this in the last few shows, but I can't overstate how having such a faster turnaround time for core tests just
Hmm.
increases the velocity. So much so, I think between GitLab CI and Stephen Musgrave's needs review issue queue work, I think the core team is getting backed up on committing stuff. Like things are just getting fixed faster than they can get them in because they're still bottlenecked. They still need to do they they obviously rely on tests, and if the tests are failing, then they're not going to put it in. But they still do their own due diligence as well, and there's only so much they can do. And I think things are getting in fat at a faster rate now because GitLab CI is doing turnaround so much faster that people like when I was doing testing initially, when I worked on stuff in core initially, it would be 45, 50 minutes. So you do something and then come back to it a day later or 3 hours later. With a 10-minute turnaround time, you could push something up and then kind of review the code and double check what you think you're doing before the run finishes and make your next round of changes. So you can kind of just sit down in a good block of time and work on it. And
Yeah.
then Steven's giving such timely advice to people that he's just keeping the velocity up. So between those two things, I think we'll start seeing a lot of stuff start to get more rapidly triaged and fixed and
I,
you know
I would
streamlined.
actually, along those same lines with the GitLab stuff. Now that it's coming to a close, coming to completion, right? Kind of fully actualized in the D.O and all that stuff. I would actually challenge our listeners, instead of creating patches, use the merge request flow, right? I still
Especially in
see a
core.
lot I still see a lot of patches on D.O, which are fine or great for like the being able to kind of like pull that into your composer. But the merge request workflow is so easy and like fast and wonderful that I definitely implore everybody to
They're going to be
to
shutting down patches
go
pretty
to
soon,
go
I
do
think.
it. Well, so that's interesting, but like, how do you just shut down patches? I mean, you still can add files to do Drupal.org for like images and stuff. So like, are they just
Like
going to
Drupal
limit
CI.
it? They're just
I'm pretty sure there was a time not too long ago where, for at least a brief period of time, you couldn't upload it an attachment that had a patch extension. They had
and,
actually removed it, and then I
and
think
then
there
there
was an
was
outcry, and they restored it.
there was outrage.
Yep.
Bunch of old Drupal developers were like, "No, what are you doing?"
I
Grabbed
mean,
their torches and pitchforks, and
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I still maintain that there's only one piece of value still to having patches, and I'd love to find a solution for this. And and it's not Composer, because you shouldn't be using patches on D.O for Composer anyway. You should have them all locally anyway. But
I
the
don't know if I
value,
agree with that, but we can talk about that another day.
absolutely. I mean, the value of having numbered patches or patches and comments is people can talk about a point in time with the merge request. If Martin makes a merge request and then a bunch of people
Mhm.
use it, I look at it and realize, oh, it doesn't fix its edge case, and I make a change, and then bunch of people use it, and then Ron makes a change, and that breaks something in mine and fixes something in Martin's piece. Like it's hard to know at what point people have tested things. Whereas with a bunch of patches, people will be like, oh, 61 works for me. Or if a patch stops applying and I come back to the issue queue, I can look at it and see like, yeah, there's been 10 patches since I last did it. Everybody's saying that the last 3 don't work for them. So I'm not even going to try applying it. I'll apply the 4th most recent by so and so. Because somebody's maybe trying to work on something new on the patch and it's breaking some other stuff. They need to be able to continue that work, but I can apply the more stable patch. And we don't really have that with just merge requests. Like people aren't saying like, oh yeah, I've been applying commit XYZ and that's the one that works for me. And then I go find it. But if people had a way to say like, generate a patch for me right now, and it just generates a patch with the commit hash in it and some identifier, people can use that patch and say, yeah, that one works for me. This one doesn't. The developers that aren't working on the patch and working on the merge request, but just want to use a patch and test it locally can still say like, hey, this particular version is working for me, and then they can get some community feedback. Whereas with, I think what we'll see is people will start using the diff link as their patch, and that's just the worst solution all around, because
Yep.
if somebody pushes up something, they can break everything. Like,
So I'm probably the worst person to ask because, I in my head I'm like, the diff link isn't so bad because well, I wouldn't listen, I wouldn't use it in production. Like I wouldn't use it in like a staging environment, but like if you're doing development and you're using the diff
Oh,
link and somebody goes and changes it, like at least you immediately know like, hey, your change just broke this thing that was once working, right? So like maybe it's making more people pay more attention to issues which could potentially push them forward. But yeah, I do agree, Nick, that there needs to be some sort of solution for
yeah,
obtaining a patch file.
yeah. I
Um,
wish that, I think the long-term solution is just a button that says generate patch from current whatever for this issue fork, and it generates it. Like, it's not something that you can upload anymore. You can only generate them, so everybody's working from the same thing, and it gets some sort of a comment identifier, and then people can use that. Um, and then people can upload their own, like, because yeah, merge request is so much better for every other reason.
Agreed.
I mean,
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
I would just add to that. See, I think I'm wondering, is the problem with the way that the GitLab gives everybody access to write to the same branch, and if everybody working on an issue had to create their own branch, and you could basically merge other people's branches into yours, but if you want to work on it separately from other people, you work on a different branch from them, and then you create a merge request from your branch and not have a single merge request that multiple people are writing to. And then you can obviously create a patch from whichever branch you want to, but
We
it's
will.
just a thought.
There are multiple, like anything in Drupal, there are multiple ways to do it. I'm sure we'll find a way that
Yep.
we'll standardize in a way. Okay, so we're getting to the end of our show here. I want to do a lightning round question, and then I'm going to ask each of you for final predictions on the Drupal community / the Drupal ecosystem. Lightning round question here. Martin, I'm going to send it to you first. No pressure. 2024, will Drupal 7 actually be gone?
I mean, no, because it's not officially end of life until 2025 anyway.
Good question.
Yeah, my prediction is it will lose sort of community security coverage in January 2025. We've already seen folks like Hero Dev step up with sort of ways to augment that if you need to use your Drupal 7 site longer. I feel like things like retrofit and some of the other sort of community tools that are available now to ease that transition. I mean, in the same way that we talked in a couple of shows ago that there's still apparently 2 Drupal 5 sites using the flag module. So Drupal 5 sites are still around. You're going to have Drupal 7 sites around for a while. That's my take.
100%.
All right. Well, seeing as Martin kind of busted up my lightning round there with logic and a very concise answer, we're just going to move on to our last question, which is predictions on the Drupal community and the Drupal ecosystem for 2024. Nick Laughlin, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, my first prediction is that I think the Advent Calendar next year is going to explode. I think one of the side effects, James, of you kind of outsourcing people is that you've now have 24 more advocates to talk about it next year, and next year you have 48. So exponential growth. So I think that's what we'll see next year.
Awesome. James, I'll go to you next. What are you anticipating from the Drupal community next year?
Well, I think the move to the GitLab I think we've talked about the CI part of it a bit. We haven't really talked about the issue queue, and so I think issues are going to be moving from Drupal.org into GitLab, and I think that's going to be really cool because finally be able to use Markdown in issues is one thing I'm looking forward to, and I think I went to a couple of Drupal events this year and really enjoyed them. So I'm looking forward to going to a few more next year. Definitely want to go to DrupalCon in Barcelona. If I can manage it to make it over to your side of the pond, would love to go to Portland, isn't it?
Yes, it is Portland. I would love to meet you there. So that sounds lovely.
I really enjoyed Dev Days in Vienna. So there's Dev Days in, I'm blanking on where it is.
I think it was Bulgaria, but I can't remember the city.
Bulgaria, thank you. That's right.
Burgos.
There you go. All right. Ron, predictions on the Drupal community and the ecosystem, anything?
So this could just be wishful thinking, but I'm going to just go way out, like completely off the map, and say that I think we're going to see a lot of interest and a rise in using HTMX with Drupal, because I personally think it is a perfect fit in theory. And all we need is to see something working out there, and I think it'll take off.
And I have a prediction that we'll be talking about a talking Drupal about HTMX in the future.
Look at that. It's already happening.
Okay, there we go. Sorry, nope. We already talked to Ron. Martin, what about you?
So I am going to predict that in 2024, we're going to see a continued resurgence of Drupal in-person events. I feel like since the pandemic's ended, we're definitely seeing an uptake, and I feel like it's really a huge shot in the arm for the community and the level of engagement. I'm going to predict we're going to see continued maturity in things like the storybook integration for Drupal and the way that really gets front-end developers excited about using Drupal as sort of the foundational technology, and also want to sort of quickly drop in a mention of a JSX theme engine that's already in development for Drupal, so that people who are more used to that JSX style of notation instead of things like Twig are going to be able to find an easier path to start working with Drupal as well.
Yes, I agree with all of those points, especially the one about events, seeing as I'm on the EOWG. We love events and want to see more Drupal events. I think one last thing from our show last week with Batty is Drupal getting out into other events and other communities. And I'm really looking forward to more of that in 2024, seeing Drupal at, different events. Seeing the inclusion of different communities. So I look forward to us growing the Drupal community in that way in the new year. Well, as we come to a close, I'd like to thank all of you for joining me this week. And hopefully we'll talk to you much more in 2024.
Do you have questions or feedback? You can reach out to Talking Drupal on Twitter with the handle Talking Drupal, or by email with show@talkingdrupal.com. You can connect with our hosts and other listeners on the Drupal Slack in the Talking Drupal channel.
You can promote your Drupal community event on Talking Drupal. Learn more at talkingdrupal.com/TD promo.
Get the Talking Drupal newsletter to learn more about our guest host show news, upcoming shows, and much more. Sign up for the newsletter at talkingdrupal.com/newsletter.
Thank you, patrons, for supporting Talking Drupal. Your support is greatly appreciated. You can learn more about becoming a patron at talkingdrupal.com and choosing the Become a Patron button. All right, we've gotten to the end of our show. James, if folks wanted to get a hold of you, how could they go about doing that?
I am Lost Car Park on most things. Drupal Slack is probably the easiest one to get me on. I'm on, I think I don't use Twitter very much anymore, but I still am there. I'm on Mastodon. I'm on Lost Car Park at mastodon.ie. lostcarpark.com is my website.
Awesome. Martin, what about you?
On all the Drupal and social channels, they can find me as @manclue.
And Ron, what about you?
Similar pattern. Most of the places I'm RL Northcutt.
Nick Laughlin.
You can find me online pretty much everywhere at Nixman, NICXVAN.
And I'm John Picozzi. You can find me on all the major social networks as well as Drupal.org at John Picozzi. And you can find out more about EPAM at EPAM.com.
And if you've enjoyed listening, we've enjoyed talking.
Have a good one, everyone.